In my opinion, Netflix's biggest mistake was canceling Crystal Age of Resistance. And to get into why, we need to get into the production of this show, what and what's so great about this show, and why this was such an abysmal failure on Netflix's part. But first, we need to talk about what makes Dark Crystal so special and what even is Dark Crystal. Dark Crystal was a film that was released in the 80s, and I was shown it a few years ago when I was about 8 or 11. And here's my Blu-ray copy, which is a beautiful Blu-ray copy. If you open this up here, it's a map of Thra, which is the world that Dark Crystal takes place in. You get some cool notes from the production and stuff, photo from the movie, and they have a little Blu-ray there of this movie. And what makes this movie so special is that this film was directed by Jim Henson, and Jim Henson was he created the Muppets, Sesame Street. Now those were late '60s, early '70s creations of his, and Jim was kind of being tired as limiting his creativities to things that were mostly known by children. He wanted to be known as making more adult content. Of course, the Muppets was something that had a lot of adult humor in it and had a lot of celebrities that children didn't know much about. But overall, because of the nature of those puppets and those characters, it was very much seen as a kids thing, and a lot of kids watch it and grow up and loving it. So it's kind of an all ages type thing. But he still was unhappy with that he was being known as this, so he wanted to go and create an epic fantasy movie. And Dark Crystal was his example of that. Well, him and Frank Oz got together, made this movie, and they test screened the movie. And what they did is they found that they had no dialogue for most of the characters, and it was just gibberish noises, made up language of these characters, and it was abysmal. The test screening went horribly, and they had to dub in dialogue and dub in other things to fix this problem that they themselves created. And the issue with this series is that, or this movie was, I will tell you, this is not a flawless movie. Do I recommend this film? Of course I do. I think that it's one of those films that everyone should watch. It has a huge cult following for a reason. But why this film is so popular and beloved is because the puppetry is amazing in this film. The music in this film is amazing. The score, the theme, dun da da da, da dun da, da da da, da da da. Listen to that theme on YouTube; it's amazing. And it's on YouTube where you can look it up, watch the movie. The cinematography is amazing, and the story here is not a bad story. It's a classic kind of fantasy tale. The issue with the movie is it needed better characters. A lot of the movie is very slow and monotonous, and a lot of the characters don't work in this movie. And the Gelfling puppets also in this film were not very catching to the eyes. While most of the puppetry is amazing, the main characters' puppets do not look very good, and a lot of this film was also very confusing because the movie has an amazing world and universe to it, but Jim Henson was only able to capture so much in one movie. They wanted to do sequels, they wanted to do other things and explain this world, and unfortunately this film, it didn't fail hugely, but it also didn't do well enough to make its money back, and so this film was a financial failure, but it has since grown a huge cult following, and so Netflix wanted to make a series. And so these creators pitched a show called Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. And it was a prequel series because, if you don't know, in the universe of the Dark Crystal, there are the Gelflings. And these Gelflings in the original movie are the last of their kind. And they saved the universe. That's kind of how that movie goes. So you can't really make a sequel to the Dark Crystal very well without Gelflings. That's kind of the major part of the story. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to pitch a prequel, a series about how the Gelflings kind of, what happened before all the events of the Dark Crystal, and furthering events, adding details to the story. So when they were pitched, Netflix was pitched the show as an animated series because they said this. The creators didn't want to do a show of puppets, even though that's what they prefer to do, but they didn't want to do it because the money. They knew that the show was probably not going to do very well if it was done with puppets. It'd be way too expensive. But Netflix said, we're not greenlighting the show unless you do it with puppets. So they greenlit the show, and they did it with puppets. That's one of the big signs here, is that this show was very expensive to make. And I think there's another issue here with this series. Let's look at this cast list here for this show. Let's go here. Google search cast. So this cast is very large, and there's a lot of people here. There's Anya Taylor-Joy. There's Taron Egerton. All these very famous actors and celebrities were doing voices in the show as the characters, and I think that's why this show kind of suffered a little bit. This show should not have been made the way it is. They should have taken the original creators' response and say, "Hey, it's too much money." But there's a lot of things that went wrong with this show that we'll dive into. But let's talk about what's great about the show. So as I mentioned, this show is a prequel. I'm not going to give spoilers because the reality is, while this show has been out for a very, very long time, there's still a lot of Dark Crystal fans who have not seen this show because Netflix did such a shitty job at advertising it and promoting the show. Because this is the thing that Netflix does a lot. They don't advertise something and expect the fan base just to show up for things. And a lot of stuff that works. Like, you don't really need to market Stranger Things that much. People just show up at Stranger Things, But this is not one of those shows. This is not a mainstream popular movie that this show is based on. It is a cult movie. That means that, yes, there is a diehard fan base, but you still need to know the diehard fan base that this thing is there, because not everyone's going to know because of how this fan base works. So the show came out, and I initially took this show for granted. It came out 10 episode season, and basically what it was about is the Skeksis have discovered that if they use the crystal, this big crystal, to extract essence, like basically the souls, essentially, that's what essence is, out of the Gelflings, they can live longer and it can preserve their life. So naturally, one of the Gelflings sees them do this and is terrified and witnesses their partner die. This happens in the first episode, so I'm just kind of spoiling the first episode because I feel like it's the best way to explain the plot of the show. You understand kind of what the show is about. So he goes on a journey along with a bunch of other Gelflings to basically start a new age of resistance and save Thra, which is the name of the world here. And it is a true fantasy epic. One of the things that also hurt this show is the first 2 episodes. Now, the first 2 episodes are very slow. I've seen people tell me over and over again they're so slow that they didn't want to watch the rest. First of all, don't ever do that with any TV show. Now, if it's a multiple season show, that's different, but you should at least watch an entire season, especially when it's dropped all at once for you. Like, you can watch all that at once, and yet you're choosing not to because the first 2 episodes are boring. What TV shows do you know have amazing first 2 episodes? There are very few. The first few episodes are the worst because they're people who make it are getting the groove of things and trying to figure out what to do. I mean, for crying out loud, one of the greatest animated TV shows of all time is The Simpsons, and the first season of that show, while not being bad, was not nearly as good as some of the Golden Age episodes that came out later on. And so, you had to wait for that show to get good, essentially. Well, get great, really. But, that's a lot of that kind of stuff that happens. And so, I think with binge culture, so many people are so down to not finish things or blah blah blah. They feel like they have to watch everything at once or not at all, and so they chose not at all in this case. And I think it's a big issue because a show like this felt like it needed to be dropped week to week because the show constantly had new plot revelations, new things happening, and that would have been really cool to theorize about. How cool is it about like Loki and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision when plot revelations happen and you learn new information? You see all these people go, hey, look, I think this is going to happen next week. And, they may be wrong, but they're speculating, they're talking about the show. You see it trending every single week. Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance could have been that. But instead, Netflix has this shitty format that they created called binge culture. And what's wrong with binge culture is because you think you want all the content at once, but you don't. You don't want all the content for months, all at once, because what happens when you watch those 10 episodes? You're starved for content for months on end, or over a year even, in some cases, waiting for more. When you could have had 10 weeks of content, and you could have had a fan base building up for the show that could have made it more popular and more successful. Don't you want the shows you like to be successful? Because that's how that happens. Is it coming out week to week? People watching it week to week, talking about it. And yes, I understand. It's annoying to have to wait. Great, but you need to have some patience and just wait, you piece of shit. Sorry, I hate Netflix's binge culture because even the shows I like to binge, it's like, come on now. And if you really can't wait that long if you really don't want to watch it week to week, then wait till it's all at once. Because either way, you're going to be able to binge it. It's not like that format is taken away from you. It's just not releasing like that anymore. And Netflix, I think, is going to have to change with that format. I think it is a very terrible format for that type of thing. And I think it ruined the show. And also the lack of marketing. Because when you don't market something like this, and the people do check it out, dip out because it's so slow, and they're not hearing other people talking about saying it's good, then they're not ever going to want to go back and watch the show. So it killed the show. Also, how expensive the show was. Personally, I think they should have done an animated show. While I love the puppetry of the show, I think that type of thing really hurt the show in a lot of ways, because it's like, well, I'm watching this beautifully animated or beautifully done puppetry show, but if I can't get more of the show, what's the point? It's a story that continues. I want more. And I'm surprised Netflix didn't announce they were adapting it into comics or something to continue the story. I don't know why they were so quick to dump this show. It was very insulting to its fan base, pretty much, because yes, it was expensive, but you're the reason it was so expensive. You don't have an excuse. And also, you're the reason it failed. You didn't market it. You didn't spend the money making sure the show was promoted. You didn't spend the money, the legwork to promote this show. So yeah, it crashed and burned. Very insulting. But the good thing about the show was that, well, it was a really good show overall. The voice acting from the celebrity cast was amazing. Though I would prefer they not do a celebrity cast, because again, the show might have been able to continue had they not done that. Because if you don't have a celebrity cast, then you can just select unknowns, pay them less because you're paying more for the celebrities. Even though they're doing a great job, I would have rather not had that if it had the potential to do more. While I didn't enjoy the slow pace of the show very much, at first when I rewatched it, I kind of understood it more. There's an episode where a character stops for about 2 minutes in the episode, brushes his hair, eats food, gets ready for the day, That's how the episode starts. And to some people, that's really boring. That's really terrible to them. They can't handle it. But I think the point of stuff like that is to make you feel like this world is lived in. Make you feel like this is this is something a character is just casually doing. And that's because that's probably what he casually does. And that's how you make a world feel lived in. And because you make it feel like the world lives on beyond the screen, beyond what you're seeing happening. And it's a beautiful show. It has so many great characters and so much great writing and effects. And it's an amazing show. But you have to be patient with it. You have to be patient to get there. And of course, it's not a perfect show. I don't think there's any major issues besides some people not being able to get into the pacing. But I think it's one of those cases of people just being lazy and having too little of an attention span for really great filmmaking and presentation that is amazing. And you should be able to just get over yourself and work with the show because you get a really good show out of it. So. And the worst thing I think that came out of this show was that it's cancellation. Now, the cancellation of this show was bullshit. The reason I say that was because it was announced the show won an Emmy. And the show won for like visual effects and some other things. Then Netflix drops that same day, oh, by the way, the show's canceled. First of all, you're a douchebag if you do this. What's wrong with you as a company that you can't wait a day or a week to say the show's canceled? Why do you need to drop it the day that the show wins an award? Let the fans of something be happy for a second. No, we don't give a shit. We're just gonna, bye-bye, you're canceled now. And it's like, fine, if you want to cancel it, whatever, do that. But it's a big issue when you're the reason this thing didn't do well. You didn't market it. You didn't do these things. And then also, you, as a company, are dropping it the same day it wins an award. Why would you do that? There is no logical reason why you would do that. That pisses everybody off. And I'm surprised there wasn't more outrage at Netflix for this. And I know we're never going to get this show to come back. But I want people who have seen this show and other things like it to show their love and appreciation for one of the greatest, I think, ever things Netflix has ever created in their library. And a show that should not exist, but does, but we need to be appreciative of this technical masterpiece, of this masterpiece of filmmaking, of this masterpiece of writing, and just so much. We need to be appreciative of what we got while we got it, because this is a show that is Netflix's biggest mistake and should have never happened, but it is one of the greatest pieces of art I've seen to come out of Netflix. It's not quite up there as some of my favorites. BoJack Horseman's still up there, but this is definitely one of my favorite things to ever come out of Netflix of all time. And if you have not seen Dark Crystal, the movie or the series, you should watch both. They are both very good, and I would recommend them. Thank you guys for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, let me know, because this was kind of an experiment. I was experimenting with the format of this video, and I wanted to try out my new mic, and I thought, hey, I revisited Dark Crystal Age of Resistance because I just genuinely wanted to revisit those characters in that world. So I sat down to watch it again, and I wanted to do all that, and I thought this would be a fun video to kind of talk about the history of the movie and the show, and kind of talk about my thoughts on both and what I really appreciate and like about both, and why I think this was one of Netflix's biggest mistakes and failures on their part. And as someone who loves the show, very disappointed. Thank you guys for watching.